Today we will be discussing literacy, a skill that most of us take for granted. Literacy, or lack of it, has far-reaching implications in our society and our community. Please stay tuned to meet a group who will be working in the community to improve reading skills among our children and adults.
Welcome to The Better Part, a program by and for seniors and devoted to exploring the many facets of those better years of our lives. The name of our program was inspired by a quotation from Robert Browning. "Grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made." Now, sit back and enjoy a program made especially to provide seniors with useful information, plus some lighter moments to brighten your day.
Hello, I'm Phil Lenahan of The Better Part. Today's program deals with literacy, or reading skills. Reading, the interpretation of those symbols on a page, which we call an alphabet. I once heard it referred to as a code, which when you really stop to think about it, it is. We can appreciate it when we pick up a document or book which is not only written in another language, but uses another alphabet. It is completely unreadable, or as they say, it's Greek to me. We have with us today Sandy Reed, President of Vision Literacy, and Steve Toy, member of the Vision Literacy Board of Directors. What is Vision Literacy?
Good question. Vision Literacy is a nonprofit organization, and our vision is to create a community where everyone who lives in it has adequate literacy skills. And by that, I mean that everyone can read above the 8th grade level. So to reach that goal, we provide services. We teach adults over 18 basic reading, writing, math, and computer skills. We've been around since 1985. We started, actually, it was a program called the Reading Program. But today, Vision Literacy, which is our name today, provides our free services through the Santa Clara County Library System. Now, in addition to providing the services, we train the people, the tutors, to work with adults one-on-one and in small groups. Because when you think about it, adult learners are very, very different from children who are learning. Children who are learning go to school full-time, it's their job, they go all day and they have homework at night. But adults who don't know how to read and write English have only a couple of hours a week, and so we train tutors in how to work with adults who have a small amount of time to learn English. And I have been involved with Vision Literacy because I've been a tutor myself for the past 5 years.
Steve, we're in Silicon Valley with all this education. Is literacy really a serious problem?
You know, you really would think that we're in Silicon Valley, a technology hotbed, very well educated, that Silicon Valley doesn't have the same problems that the rest of the country does have. But the fact of the matter is, statistically, we have pretty much the exact same problem. 1 in 5 people have low literacy skills throughout the United States. And here in Silicon Valley, about 1 in 5 people do not have the requisite skills, have not reached the 8th grade reading level that Sandy talked about, which is pretty much the level that you need in order to survive in this world. And we're just talking about surviving. So for example, think about all the things that you do every day that requires reading skills. I mean, I think about just getting down here today, all the things that I had to do in order to read the address, go online, get to Google, figure out how I get down here, read the street signs that needed to be read in order to get through the various interchanges to arrive at this location. We just take it for granted. It just happens. And folks out there with below an 8th grade reading level do not really have the coping skills to survive, let alone compete in this valley where the technology sort of prowess in this valley is so high that you have to have super literacy skills when compared to the rest of the country in order to survive in this particular area. We take for granted the fact that we are trying to navigate some of the toughest times we've ever had in trying to figure out what credit default swaps are and subprime mortgages, where other folks can't even figure out how to get from San Jose to Mountain View. So it is a big problem. It is 1 in 5 in Silicon Valley. 1 in 5, 20%, the same as the rest of the country. So yes, Silicon Valley has the same statistical problem, but we have a bigger problem in that the bar for competing in this valley is higher than in other places in the country. So statistically the same, practically even tougher problem here in Silicon Valley.
Well, but that impacts people with low reading skills, but does that affect the community? Does that affect me, that other people can't read very well?
Good point. And the fact of the matter is, yes, it does. You may not even know one of the 1 in 5 that have those low literacy skills, but it affects you in a very, very real way. It affects your pocketbook. There are all kinds of costs on society that are causing your pocketbook to have a drain on it because of these low literacy skills. It comes in the area of medical costs. Your medical costs, my medical costs, Sandy's medical costs are all higher because of low literacy skills. The burden of the high incarceration rate in this country is definitely attributed, at least in part, to low literacy skills. There is workplace expenses that are being expended in order to deal with low literacy skills. So there's a hard dollar cost to the fact that 1 in 5 cannot read. And there's also a social cost. And we talk about the haves and the have-nots all the time. And that separation occurs, and we see it in a very practical manner in that you and maybe some of the people that are even watching this program think 1 in 5. If I think about 50 of my friends, there's no way that 10 of them have low literacy skills. It's just not possible. And that's probably right, because the folks with low literacy skills don't wind up in your social circle. They don't wind up in the hallways of work with you, and that causes a tearing in the social fabric between the haves and the have-nots. You don't see, you don't interact with those folks. So there's very definitely a social cost that comes along with it. There's a nuisance cost. You know, when we can't communicate with each other, with the folks that we buy products from, vendors, people who service us, help us take care of our kids and our homes, there's definitely a cost there. And there's probably even an existential cost about whether we really should be caring for other folks that do not have the ability to take care of themselves. We take it for granted that kids should be educated. We take it for granted that we have a responsibility to educate our kids so that they have the tools that they need when they grow up and get out in the world. Why stop at 18? So while there is social and nuisance and existential costs that may not directly affect you, and it's more in the moral conundrum area, there's very definitely a real dollar cost in medical and prison and services that are expended because of these low literacy skills.
Let's return to the comment you made about medical. How does this affect medical costs? I mean, medical costs are very serious to everybody, but is there a general cost to the community on literacy and medicine and things like that?
Absolutely. There's a study done up at University of San Francisco that estimated that the costs as a result of low literacy, the additional cost on our medical system as a result of low literacy, is about $73 billion a year. That's a big number, $73 billion. And that cost is a result of people who either let ailments go until it's an emergency and wind up in emergency care when a regular doctor visit could have done the trick. It's a result of people not following their doctor's advice because they can't read and follow instructions. It's a result of repeated visits as a result of not understanding things, taking the wrong medications. There's a definite cost in terms of understanding the prescription drugs that are out there. It's estimated that 46%, we're no longer at 1 in 5 now, we're almost 1 in 2, 46% can't properly read the label on a prescription drug bottle because it comes with all these almost hieroglyphics of 1X5DY. I mean, what does that all mean to folks? And if 46% can't read a prescription bottle, they can't take the right drugs, they take too little, they take, God forbid, too much, and they wind up using medical services that shouldn't have happened in the first place. So $73 billion a year is the actual price tag for low literacy skills on all of us.
Sandy, you do some work with the the people incarcerated. Tell us a little bit about that program and how that impacts our society.
Well, let me start by saying that in the United States, we have less than 5% of the population in the entire world, but we have almost 1/4 of the number of people who are in prison in the world, in this country. And of those people, 7 out of 10 have low literacy skills. And we see that at Vision Literacy through our programs at the Elmwood Correctional Facility in Milpitas, where we provide services, tutoring services to both men and women at the jail. And for many people incarcerated, having a tutor reach out to them may be the first time that they realize that they can change their own lives if they just ask for help. And so we see that people come to us, they come to our program at the jail, both men and women, and they say, I want to read a book to my child. And so we work with them, and that's the goal. And we, for the first time in their lives, maybe they can read a book to their child. They can help a child with their homework. They may say, I need a driver's license. I don't have a driver's license. And they don't have a driver's license because they couldn't go to the DMV like we did and take the test. And so working with the tutor, we can help them get a driver's license. If they have a driver's license, they can get a better job. They can get a job that, is at a better level for them. So we definitely see that we can have a dramatic impact on a population of extremely low literacy skills by providing these programs at the jails. We also encourage people who, once they get out of jail, to continue working with us, to continue making improvements. And many people do that. They kind of graduate from the jail program and then they work with other groups or with tutors. And as I said, for many people, it's the first step. We're the first step, not the last place for them to turn, but we're the first place for them to turn to say, I'm here in jail, I got to turn my life around. How do I do it?
So the psychological effect reaches right out to their family and everything.
It does.
When you teach people in the correctional institutes, are you able to do a more intense program? You did mention earlier that people who work all day long can only do it once a week. People who are incarcerated do have a little more time. Do the tutors meet with them more often?
Yes and no. Yes, the tutors meet. We have group sessions. We have one-on-one sessions. We have people who are eager to read and write because what else are they going to do while they're in their cell?
Yes.
And so they're able to spend a lot more time. And so when they're there, yes, they have more time. The problem is that Elmwood is a minimum security facility. Mm-hmm. And so the stays aren't long. Mm-hmm. And so they may have 3 months where they have a lot of time and then they're released. Mm-hmm. And that's why we try to encourage them to continue working with the tutor once they're out of the correctional facility. Actually, the people who tutor in the jail consider it themselves very successful when they don't see their students coming back because they have not committed another crime.
Very good. Steve, the system most likely has failed our kids when they wind up with parents who have literacy problems. When Martha Cantor was here, she was I believe the president of De Anza College. She did mention how many freshmen show up without proper reading skills and they have to take extra courses to get caught up. So how does this happen?
Well, it's a very involved and complex question. The system has many, many moving pieces. I remember when I was in college, I was taking a course called Social Economics. And in that course, we walked in first day and there was a formula on the board that stretched the length of the blackboard. It was a pretty scary and daunting formula. And we were informed by the professor that this was a formula that took every piece of information that we know about kids and education and tried to figure out what has the greatest effect and impact. And we spent quite a lot of time solving for each factor: class size, money per student, books per student, parental involvement, all kinds of things, gender, race issues, everything that you can imagine. And the thing that was most statistically significant was parental involvement.
Do we have a handle on the problem that we're moving some of our kids through school without the proper skills?
I would say we don't quite have a handle on the problem just yet. And without assigning blame to anybody as to how we got there, the fact of the matter is we here in Silicon Valley right now have 1 in 4 of our kids dropping out of high school. If 1 in 4 are dropping out of high school, we're not getting them the skills that they need, because you have to have a high school diploma at a very minimum to be out there and compete for any kind of job that exists out there. 2.2 million people in the United States that graduate into the ranks of the illiterate adults in this society every year. That kind of number means we don't really have a handle on the problem just yet.
That's unfortunate. Sandy, what are some of the disadvantages you've noticed about people with low literacy skills in the workplace?
Well, if you can't read, you can't get a newspaper or look online for a job. That's an easy place to start. If you can't write, you can't complete an application. If you can't type, you can't go online to complete an application. You can't read a map, you can't use the internet to get directions to go to a job interview. So many adult learners are, as Steve was saying, in minimum wage jobs. And those minimum wage jobs do not require them to read or write. And so they can't apply for promotions, they can't advance, they can't ask for a job where they make more money, because they can't complete the forms that a manager has to sign. One example is we're working with a woman who has to do, she just got promoted into a job, and she has to do 18 annual evaluations of her employees, and she cannot read and write English at that skill, and she's terrified. So we're working with her as a tutor. Can you imagine trying to do the annual job evaluations and you don't read and write English? So that it definitely, when competing for jobs, it has an enormous impact on a person's ability to get a job.
What about their right to vote?
Oh, well, the right to vote. Have you looked at our ballot recently in California?
Well,
I mean,
I'm pretty literate, and I'm not sure whether I understand.
Right. You know, who can comprehend it? You can't take someone to the booth with you. Many adult learners are afraid to vote because they're afraid that they're going to make a mistake. Because we know you can make a mistake, and you know exactly what every word is and who you want to vote for. So many of them are afraid to vote for that reason.
What are the impacts of computers on literacy?
Well, just to actually bounce back to another point about the issue of literacy and how it affects these high school students, 2 very important statistics. 42%, folks that do not have a high school education have a 42% lower pay scale than those folks that do have a high school education. So that is a significant difference between the two. Secondly, those who don't have a high school education are 4 times more likely to be unemployed than somebody with a high school education. So those are 2 additional points that let you know how important it is to deal with, to get a high school education and graduate. Now, with respect to computers and literacy, sometimes you would think that computers help the problem, in that there's all kinds of reading programs on computers, and that it would be much easier to get trained in literacy skills. And intuitively, that kind of makes sense. However, we're talking about folks who don't have skills at the 8th grade reading level, which means getting onto a computer, physically purchasing and setting up a computer is a challenge. So we live in this computer-rich area where computer skills, computer literacy, and computer knowledge is a fundamental prerequisite to any job that you might do and surviving in this economy here. But getting over that bar, leaping over that bar in order to get a computer and get it set up in the first place, can't happen with basic literacy skills. So the computer issue is a barrier, not a help, when you're talking about literacy skills below 8th grade reading level.
Oh, well, I can understand their problems. Are we as a country facing this, or is this every little community is facing it and there's no coordinated effort to solve these problems?
Well, there isn't really a coordinated effort at the national or federal level. So the way that we are dealing with this adult literacy situation here in Silicon Valley and throughout the rest of the country is the communities are banding together, usually through the library, like we do through the Santa Clara County Community Library System. With the help of the library, we set up these literacy programs that are very volunteer driven, and we do our best to get the word out to folks that says, hey, there is help out there. There is a way that you can address this problem. And we do our best to handle all of the things that need to happen in a literacy program at this small community level, including all of the testing and databases of information in order to get people in, get them matched up with tutors, figure out what reading level they happen to be when they come in, test them later to see if we're doing a good job. All of that stuff is kind of tough for small communities, and but that's how it's happened throughout this country. Even in the Bay Area, we have probably 16 or so different literacy programs just like us, ringing the Bay Area, because it's done at a city level in most cases with their local library. And of course, you multiply that throughout the entire country, and you just see these little programs all over the place. We really could be assisted by some sort of federal level commitment to the issue of adult literacy. We have no problem committing to educating our kids. Why stop at age 18? Why not educate everybody so that everybody can survive on their own? Quite frankly, I got involved in the program because I love the fact that when I help somebody learn how to read, they can take care of themselves for the rest of their life. It's the old adage, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for life. And that's what we do with reading. We're only doing it at the community level. We could definitely benefit from more national cooperation and somebody at the national level having a vision to drive this issue forward.
Well, I hope we see that someday. Sandy, I have a question on the, what is it? It's the Henry Huffman Leadership Institute that you folks also have. What is that?
Absolutely. The Henry Huffman Leadership Institute, it's a leadership development program, and it's aimed at learners, high-level learners, so people who are reading at the, and keep in mind that by high level we mean 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th grade. So people who are reading at a higher level, and it's a 6-month program, and it's on weekends, and they devote like 2 weeks for 6 months. It's like every weekend that they come, and they develop leadership skills. And what we want to do is encourage them to become better role models for their families, to assume leadership roles at work, to participate in community activities and decision making, and to advocate for resources for adult learners. Like, let me just tell you about one of our fellow board members, Yvette. Yvette began with vision literacy years ago as a learner, and she struggled and finally realized she saw something on television that said, if you need help learning to read and write, call this number. So she called Vision Literacy, and she's been working for a long time. She worked with her tutor, and she finally graduated, and Yvette is, as I said, now on our board of directors. And one of her roles in being on our board of directors is to advocate for learners, to be a learner's advocate. And so we really want to encourage people who come through our program to become advocates for learners.
That's a moving story. I saw that in the newsletter.
And I need to tell you that it was named in memory of Henry Huffman, who himself was a learner. It was named in his memory, and he devoted his life to spreading awareness about literacy in our community.
Well, thank you. Steve, it's my understanding that all these services are free. Is that correct?
It is true. It is all free to the learners who come to us and want to improve their literacy skills. But of course, nothing's free in the world. There is money required to make this all happen.
Where does it come from?
So the money that we use to bring these services to folks comes from a number of different places. One, through the library system. The government is one main area where we get our funds. A second main area is through grants. We apply to grants from various foundations and corporations who are very interested in the cause of literacy and education. And those grants usually come with some sort of particular stated mission, whether we're helping a very specific segment of society or whether we are trying to accomplish an increase in the number of hours of service that we're trying to get to somebody. But that is generally the way the grants go. And then our third area is donations by the generous public. And those usually come to us in the forms of individual donations, or we are a part of United Way. United Way, I'm sure you all know, is one of the gold standard nonprofit organizations out there, and they work with programs in their community in order to figure out which programs can help them accomplish the goals that they've set forward most effectively. And they have a pretty rigorous auditing process to make sure that the programs that they look at are accomplishing the objectives, are using money very well, and are getting the services to the people that they say they're getting. And we have become a United Way program, and so those folks that donate to the United Way can wind up directing it in our direction, or even if they just donate to the United Way in general, some of that comes to our program.
If somebody is interested in helping you out or wants to be a volunteer, where can they go to get more information?
Well, they can go to our website, which is visionliteracy.org, and there is lots of information right there. Or they can call the number that I'm sure will be posted on the screen here, and we'd be happy to talk to people directly. And there's lots of things and lots of areas that folks can help us with in order to get a more literate Santa Clara County, Silicon Valley, and quite frankly, United States.
Well, I'm glad we had this program. I've learned a lot, and I'd like to thank you both, Sandy and Steve, for joining us today and explaining literacy. I learned that it is my problem also. It's not just the person who has the literacy problem. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you for joining us today. Literacy really impacts us all. If you have any comments about our programs or would like to suggest a subject or purchase a copy of one of our programs, The Better Part can be reached at the Cupertino Senior Center at 408-777-3150 or our website www.thebetterpart.com. Selected copies of our programs are also available through the Santa Clara County Library System and on YouTube. See you next time on The Better Part.